a reading from Gravity's Rainbow, a novel by Thomas Pynchon. These pine limbs, crackling so blue and watery, don't seem to put out any heat at all. Confiscated weapons and ammo lie around half crated or piled loose inside the C Company perimeter. For days, the U.S. Army has been out sweeping Thuringia, busting into houses in the middle of the night. A certain lycanthropophobia, or fear of werewolves, occupies minds at higher levels. Winter is coming. Soon, there won't be enough food or coal in Germany. Potato crops toward the end of the war, for example, all went to make alcohol for the rockets, but there are still small arms aplenty and ammunition to fit them. Where you cannot feed, you take away weapons. Weapons and food have been firmly linked in the governmental mind for as long as either has been around. On the mountainsides, patches will flash up now and then, bright as dittany in July at the Zippo's ceremonial touch. Private First Class Eddie Pensiero, a replacement here in the 89th Division, also an amphetamine enthusiast, sits huddling nearly on top of the fire, shivering and watching the divisional patch on his arm, which ordinarily resembles a cluster of rocket noses seen out of a dilating asshole, all in black and olive drab, but which now looks like something even stranger than that, which Eddie will think of in a minute. Shivering is one of Eddie Pensiero's favorite pastimes. Not the kind of shiver normal people get, the goose on the grave, pass over and gone, but shivering that doesn't stop. Very hard to get used to at first. Eddie is a connoisseur of shivers. He is even able, in some strange way, to read them, like Sarah Bummer reads reefers, like Miklos Thanats reads whip scars. But the gift isn't limited just to Eddie's own shivers. Oh no, there are other people's shivers too. Yeah, they come in one by one. They come in all together in groups. Lately, he's been growing in his brain a kind of discriminator circuit, learning how to separate them out. Least interesting of these shivers are the ones with a perfectly steady frequency, no variation to them at all. The next to least interesting are the frequency modulated kind, now faster, now slower, depending on information put in at the other end, whatever that might be. Then you have the irregular waveforms that change both in frequency and in amplitude. They have to be Fourier analyzed into their harmonics, which is a little tougher. There is often coding involved, certain subfrequencies, certain power levels. You have to be pretty good to get the hang of these. Hey, Pensiero! It is Eddie's sergeant, Howard. Slow. Learner. Get your ass off of that fire! Oh, Sarge, chatters Eddie. Come on. I was just trying to get warm. No excuses, Pensiero. One of the colonels wants his haircut right now, and you're it. Oh, these guys, mutters Pensiero, crawling over to his sleeping bag and looking through his pack for comb and scissors. He is the company barber. His haircuts, which take hours and often days, are immediately recognizable throughout the zone, revealing as they do the hair-by-hair single-mindedness of the Benny habitué. The colonel is sitting, waiting, under an electric bulb. The bulb is receiving its power from another enlisted man, who sits back in the shadows hand-pedaling the twin generator cranks. It is Eddie's friend, Private Paddy Electro-McGonagall, an Irish lad from New Jersey, one of those million virtuous and adjusted city poor, you know, from the movies. You've seen them dancing, singing, hanging out the washing on the lines, getting drunk at wakes, worrying about their children going bad. I just don't know anymore, father. He's a good boy, but he's running with a cool crowd. On through every wretched Hollywood lie, down to and including this year's big hit, A Tree Grows in Brooklyn. With his crank here, young Paddy is practicing another form of Eddie's gift. Though he's transmitting, not receiving, the bulb appears to burn steadily, but this is really a succession of electric peaks and valleys, passing by at a speed that depends on how fast Paddy is cranking. It's only that the wire inside the bulb unbrightens slow enough before the next peak shows up that fools us into seeing a steady light. It's really a train of imperceptible light and dark. Usually imperceptible. The message is never conscious on Paddy's part. It is sent by muscles and skeleton, by that circuit of his body which has learned to work as a source of electrical power. Right now, Eddie Pensiero is shivering and not paying much attention to that light bulb. His own message is interesting enough. Somebody close by, out in the night, is playing a blues on a mouth harp. What's dat? Eddie wants to know, standing under the white light behind the silent colonel in his dress uniform. Hey, McGonagall, you hear something? Yes, jeers Patty from behind the generator. I hear yet another discharge flying away with big wings coming out of ass end. That's what I hear. Oh, it's the bunk, replies Eddie Pensiero. You don't hear no discharge, you big dumb-headed Mick. Hey, Pensiero, you know what an Italian submarine sounds like on that new sonar? Huh? What? Ping, gimme, wop, 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 that's what. Fuck yous, says Eddie, and commences combing the colonel's silver-black hair. The moment the comb contacts his head, the colonel begins to speak. Ordinarily, we'd spend no more than 24 hours on a house-to-house sweep. Sundown to sundown, house to house. There's a quality of black and gold to either end of it that way, silhouettes, shaken skies, pure as a cyclorama. But these sunsets out here, I don't know. Do you suppose something has exploded somewhere, really? Somewhere in the east? Another Krakatoa? Another name at least that exotic. The colors are so different now. Volcanic ash, or any finely divided substance suspended in the atmosphere can diffract the colors strangely. Did you know that, son? Hard to believe, isn't it? Rather a long taper, if you don't mind, and just short of combable on top. Yes, Private, the colors change, and how? The question is, are they changing according to something? Is the sun's everyday spectrum being modulated not at random, but systematically by this unknown debris in the prevailing winds? Is there information for us? Deep questions, and disturbing ones. Where are you from, son? I'm from Kenosha, Wisconsin. My folks have a little farm back there. Snowfields and fence posts all the way to Chicago. The snow covers the old cars up on the blocks in the yards. Big white bundles. It looks like graves registration back there in Wisconsin. Hey, Pensiero, calls Patty McGonagall. You still hearing that sound? Yeah, I think it's a mouth organ, Pensiero, busily combing up single hairs, cutting each one a slightly different length, going back again and again to touch up here and there. God is who knows their number. Atropos is who severs them to different lengths. So, God, under the aspect of Atropos, she who cannot be turned, is in possession of Eddie Pensiero tonight. I got your mouth organ, jeers Patty. Right here, look, a wop clarinet. Each long haircut is a passage. Hair is yet another kind of modulated frequency. Assume a state of grace in which all hairs were once distributed perfectly even, a time of innocence when they fell perfectly straight all over the colonel's head. Winds of the day, gestures of distraction, sweat, itchings, sudden surprises, 3-foot falls at the edge of sleep, watched skies, remembered shames, all have since written on that perfect grating. Passing through it tonight, restructuring it, Eddie Pensiero is an agent of history. Along with the reworking of the colonel's head runs the shiver-born blues. Long runs in number 2 and 3 hole correspond, tonight anyway, to passages in the deep reaches of hair, birch trunks in a very humid summer night, approaches to a stone house in a wooded park, stags paralyzed beside the high-flagged walks. Blues is a matter of lower side bands. You suck a clear note on pitch, then bend it lower with the muscles of your face. Muscles of your face have been laughing, tight with pain, often trying not to betray any emotion all your life. Where you send the pure notes is partly a function of that. There's that secular basis for blues, if the spiritual angle bothers you. I didn't know where I was, relates the colonel. I kept climbing downward along these big sheared chunks of concrete, black reinforcing rod poking out, black rust. There were touches of royal purple in the air, not bright enough to blur out over the edges or change the substance of the night. They dribbled down, lengthening out one by one. Ever seen a chicken fetus just begin? Oh, of course not. You're a city boy. There's a lot to learn out on the farm. Teaches you what a chicken fetus looks like, so that if you happen to be climbing around a concrete mountain in the dark, or see one, and see one or several up in the sky reproduced in purple, you'll know what they look like. That's a heap better than the city, son. There where you just move from crisis to crisis, each one brand new, nothing to couple it back onto. Well, here he is, cautiously edging along the enormous ruin, his hair at the moment looking very odd, brushed forward from one occipital spot, forward and up in great long points, forming a black sunflower or sunbonnet around his face, in which the prominent feature is the colonel's long, crawling magenta lips. Things grab up for him out of crevices among the debris. Sort of fast, happy lunge out and back in. Thin pinch your arms. Nothing personal. Just thought I'd grab a little night air. Haha. When they miss the colonel, as they always seem to do, why, they just zip back in with a gambler's ho-hum. Well, maybe next time. Damn it. Cut off from my regiment here. Gonna be captured and cremated by dacoits. Oh, Jesus. Here they are now, unthinkable animals, running low in the light from the G5 version of the city, red and yellow turbans, scarred dope-fiend faces, fared as the front end of a 37 Ford, same undirected eyes, same exemption from the karmic hammer. A 37 Ford? Exempt from the KH? Come on, quit fooling, they'll all end up in junkyards, same as the rest. Oh, will they, Skippy? Why are there so many on the roads, then? Well, gee, Mr. Information, the war, I mean, there's no new cars being built right now, so we'll have to keep our old reliable in tip-top shape, 'cause there's not too many mechanics left here on the home front, and we shouldn't hoard gas, and we should keep that A sticker prominently displayed in the lower right. Skippy, you little fool, you are off on another of your senseless and retrograde journeys. Come back here to the points. Here is where the path's divided. See the man back there. He is wearing a white hood. His shoes are brown. He has a nice smile, but nobody sees it. Nobody sees it because his face is always in the dark. But he is a nice man. He is the pointsman. He is called that because he throws the lever that changes the points, and we go to Happyville instead of to Payne City, or Der Liedstadt. That's what the Germans call it. There is a mean poem about the Liedstadt by a German man named Mr. Rilke, but we will not read it because we are going to Happyville. The pointsman has made sure we'll go there. He hardly has to work at all. The lever is very smooth and easy to push. Even you could push it, Skippy, if you knew where it was. But look what a lot of work he has done, with just one little push. He has sent us all the way to Happyville instead of to Payne City. That is because he knows just where the points and the lever are. He is the only kind of man who puts in very little work and makes big things happen all over the world. He could have sent you on the right trip back there, Skippy. You can have your fantasy if you want. You probably don't deserve anything better, but Mr. Information tonight is in a kind mood. He will show you Happyville. He will begin by reminding you of the 1937 Ford. Why is that dacoit-faced auto still on the roads? You said the war, just as you rattled over the points onto the wrong track. The war was the set of points, eh? Yes, Skippy. The truth is that the war is keeping things alive. Things. The Ford is only one of them. The Germans and Japs story was only one, rather surrealistic version of the real war. The real war is always there. The dying tapers off now and then, but the war is still killing lots and lots of people. Only right now it is killing them in more subtle ways, often in ways that are too complicated, even for us at this level, to trace. But the right people are dying, just as they do when armies fight. The ones who stand up, in basic, in the middle of the machine gun pattern, those who do not have faith in their sergeants. The ones who slip and show a moment's weakness to the enemy. These are the ones the war cannot use, and so they die. The right ones survive. The others, it's said, even know they have a short life expectancy, but they persist in acting the way they do. Nobody knows why. Wouldn't it be nice if we could eliminate them completely? Then no one would have to be killed in the war. That would be fun. Wouldn't it, Skippy? Jeepers! It sure would, Mr. Information. Wow, I can't wait to see Happyville. Happily, He doesn't have to wait at all. One of the dacoits comes leaping with a whistling sound. Ecru silk cord strung buzzing tight between his fists, eager let's go at it grin, and just at the same moment a pair of arms comes pincering up out of a fissure in the ruins and gathers the colonel down to safety just in time. The dacoit falls on his ass and sits there trying to pull the cord apart, muttering, "Oh shit," which even dacoits do too. "You are under the mountain," a voice announces. "Stony cave acoustics in here. Please remember from this point on to obey all pertinent regulations." His guide is a kind of squat robot, dark gray plastic with rolling headlamp eyes. It is shaped something like a crab. "That's cancer in Latin," says the robot, "and in Kenosha, too." It will prove to be addicted to one-liners that never quite come off for anyone but it. "Here is Muffin Tin Road," announces the robot. "Note the smiling faces on all the houses here." Upstairs windows are eyes, picket fence is teeth, nose is the front door. "Say," asks the colonel, taken by a sudden thought, "does it ever snow here in Happyville?" "Does what ever snow?" "You're evading." "I'm evading rum vino from Wisconsin," sings this boorish machine, "and you ought to see the nurses run. So what else is new, Jackson?" The squat creature is actually chewing gum, a Laszlo Yamf variation on polyvinyl chloride, very malleable, even sending out detachable molecules which, through an ingenious osmoelektrische Schalterwerke developed by Siemens, is transmitting in code, a damn fair approximation of Beeman's licorice flavor to the robot crab's brain. Mr. Information always answers questions. "For what he's making, I'd even question answers. Does it ever snow? Of course it snows in Happyville. A lot of snowmen 'd sure be sore if it didn't." I recall, back in Wisconsin, the wind used to blow right up the walk, like a visitor who expects to be let in, sweeps the snow up against the front door, leaves it drifted there. Ever get that in Happyville? "Old stuff," says the robot. "Anybody ever open his front door while the wind was doing that, eh?" "Thousands of times." "Then," pounces the colonel, "if the door is the house's nose and the door is open, and all of those snowy white crystals are blowing up from Muffin Tin Road in a big cloud right into the—" "Yeah!" screams the plastic robot and scuttles away into a narrow alley. The colonel finds himself alone in a brown and wine-aged district of the city. Sandstone and adobe color sweep away in a progress of walls, rooftops, streets, not a tree in sight. And who's this comes strolling down the Schokolade-Strasse? Why, it's Laszlo Yamf himself, grown to a prolonged old age, preserved like a 37 Ford against the world's ups and downs, which are never more than damped-out changes in smile, wide pearly to wistfully gauze, inside Happyville here. Dr. Yamf is wearing a bow tie of a certain limp, grayish lavender, a color for long dying afternoons through conservatory windows, minor-keyed lieder about days gone by, plaintive pianos, pipe smoke in a stuffy parlor, overcast Sunday walks by canals. Here the two men are, dry-scratched precisely, attentively on this afternoon, and the bells across the canal are tolling the hour. The men have come from very far away, after a journey neither quite remembers, on a mission of some kind, but each has been kept ignorant of the other's role. Now, it turns out that this light bulb over the colonel's head here is the same identical Osram light bulb that Franz Pokler used to sleep next to in his bunk at the underground rocket works at Nordhausen. Statistically, so their theory goes, every n-thousandth light bulb is going to be perfect, all the delta Q's piling up just right, so we shouldn't be surprised that this one's still around, burning brightly. But the truth is even more stupendous. This bulb is immortal. It's been around, in fact, since the 20s, has that old-timery point at the tip, and is less pear-shaped than more contemporary bulbs. What a history, this bulb, if only it could speak. Well, as a matter of fact, it can speak. It is dictating the muscular modulations of Paddy McGonagall's cranking tonight. This is a loop here, with feedback through Paddy to the generator again. Here it is. The story of Byron the Bulb. Byron was to have been manufactured by Tungsram in Budapest. He would probably have been grabbed up by the ace salesman Geza Rosavolgi's father, Sandor, who covered all the Transylvanian territory and had begun to go native enough to where the Home Office felt vaguely paranoid about him throwing some horrible spell on the whole operation if they didn't give him what he wanted. Actually, he was a salesman who wanted his son to be a doctor, and that came true. But it may have been the bad witch-leery auras around Budapest that got the birth of Byron reassigned at the last minute to Osram in Berlin. Reassigned, yes. There is bulb baby heaven, amiably satirized as if it was the movies or something. Well, big business, haha. But don't let them fool you. This is a bureaucracy first, and a bulb baby heaven only as a sort of sideline. All overhead, yes, out of its own pocket, the company is springing for square leagues of organdy, hogsheads of IG Farben pink and blue baby dye, hundredweights of clever Siemens electric baby bulb pacifiers, giving the suckling bulb the shape of a 110-volt current without the least trickle of power. One way or another, these bulb folks are in the business of providing the appearance of power against the night, without the reality. Actually, BBH is rather shabby. The brown rafters drip cobwebs. Now and then a roach shows up on the floor, and all the babies try to roll over to look. Being bulbs, they seem perfectly symmetrical, Skippy, but don't forget the contact at the top of the thread, going, "Oh, gah, oh, gah," glowing feebly at the bewildered roach, sitting paralyzed and squashable out on the bare boards, rushing, reliving the terror of some sudden blast of current out of nowhere, and high overhead the lambent, all-seeing bulb. In their innocence, the baby bulbs don't know what to make of this roach's abreaction. They feel his fright, but don't know what it is. They just want to be his friend. He's interesting and has good moves. Everybody's excited except for Byron, who considers the other bulb babies a bunch of saps. It is a constant struggle to turn their thoughts on anything meaningful. Hi there, babies. I'm Byron the Bulb, here to sing a little song to you that goes, "Light up and shine, you incandescent bulb babies. Looks like you got rabies. Just lay around there foaming and a-screaming like a bunch of little demons. I'm delivering unto you a kingdom of roaches, and nothing approaches that joyful feeling when you're up on the ceiling, looking down night and day on the kingdom you survey. They'll come out and love you till the break of dawn, but they run like hell when that light comes on, so shine on, baby bulbs. You're the wave of the future, and I'm here to recruit you in my great crusade. Just sing along, babies. Come on and join the big parade." Trouble with Byron's, he's an old soul, trapped inside the glass prison of a baby bulb. He hates this place, lying on his back waiting to get manufactured, nothing to listen to on the speakers but Charleston music, now and then an address to the nation. What kind of a setup's that? Byron wants to get out there and into it. Needless to say, he's been developing all kinds of nervous ailments. Baby bulb diaper rash, which is a sort of corrosion on his screw threads. Baby bulb colic, a tight spasm of high resistance someplace along the deep loops of tungsten wire. Baby hyperventilation, where it actually feels like his vacuum's been broken, though there is no organic basis. When M-Day finally does roll around, you can bet Byron's elated. He has passed the time hatching some really insane, grandiose plans. He's gonna organize all the bulbs, see, get him a power base in Berlin. He's already hep to the strobing tactic. All you do is develop the knack, yogic almost, of shutting off and on at the rate close to the human brain's alpha rhythm, and you can actually trigger an epileptic fit. True. Byron has had a vision against the rafters of his ward of 20 million bulbs all over Europe at a given synchronizing pulse arranged by one of his many agents in the grid, all these bulbs beginning to strobe together. Humans thrashing around the 20 million rooms like fish on the beaches of perfect energy. Attention, humans, this has been a warning to you. Next time, a few of us will explode. Yes, we'll unleash our kamikaze squads. You've heard of the Kyrgyz light? Well, that's the ass end of a firefly compared to what we're gonna... Oh, you haven't heard of the... Oh, well, too bad. 'Cause a few bulbs, say a million, a mere 5% of our number, are more than willing to flame out in one grand burst instead of patiently waiting out their design hours. So, Byron dreams of his guerrilla strike force. Gonna get Herbert Hoover, Stanley Baldwin, all of them, right in the face in one coordinated blast. Is Byron in for a rude awakening? There is already an organization, a human one, known as Phoebus, the International Light Bulb Cartel, headquartered in Switzerland. Run pretty much by International GE, Osram, and Associated Electrical Industries of Britain, which are in turn owned 100%, 29%, and 46%, respectively, by the General Electric Company in America. Phoebus fixes the prices and determines the operational lives of all the bulbs in the world, from Brazil to Japan to Holland, although Philips and Holland is the mad dog of the cartel, apt at any time to cut loose and sow disaster through the great combination. Given this state of general repression, there seems no place for a newborn baby bulb to start but at the bottom. But Phoebus doesn't know yet that Byron is immortal. He starts out his career at an all-girl opium den in Charlottenburg, almost within sight of the statue of Werner Siemens, burning up in a sconce, one among many bulbs witnessing the more languorous forms of Republican decadence. He gets to know all the bulbs in the place. Benito, the bulb over in the next sconce, who's always planning an escape. Bernie down the hall in the toilet, who has all kinds of urolagnia jokes to tell. His mother Brenda in the kitchen, who talks of hashish hush puppies, dildos rigged to pump floods of paragoric orgasm to the capillaries of the womb, prayers to Astarte and Lilith, queen of the night, reaches into the true night of the other, cold and naked on linoleum floors after days without sleep. The dreams and tears become a natural state. One by one, over the months, the other bulbs burn out and are gone. The first few of these hit Byron hard. He's still a new arrival, still hasn't accepted his immortality. But on, through the burning hours, he starts to learn about the transience of others, learns that loving them while they're here comes easier, and also more intense, to love as if each design hour will be the last. Byron soon enough becomes a permanent old-timer. Others can recognize his immortality on sight, but it's never discussed except in a general way. When folklore becomes flickering in from other parts of the grid, tales of the immortals, one in a Kabbalist study in Lyon who's supposed to know magic, another in Norway outside a warehouse facing Arctic whiteness with a stoicism more southerly bulbs begin strobing faintly just at the sight of. If other immortals are out there, they remain silent. But it is a silence with much, perhaps everything, in it. After love, then, Byron's next lesson is silence. As his burning lengthens toward 600 hours, the monitors in Switzerland begin to keep more of an eye on Byron. The Phoebus surveillance room is located under a little-known Alp, a chilly room crammed full of German electro-hardware, glass, brass, ebonite, and silver, massive terminal blocks shaggy with copper clips and screws, and a cadre of super-clean white-robed watchers who wander meter to meter, light as snow devils, making sure that nothing's going wrong, that through no bulb shall the mean operating life be extended. You can imagine what it would do to the market if that started happening. Byron passes surveillance's red line at 600 hours, and immediately, as a matter of routine, he is checked out for filament resistance, burning temperature, vacuum, power consumption. Everything's normal. Now, Byron is to be checked out every 50 hours hereafter. A short chime will go off in the monitoring station whenever it's time. At 800 hours, another routine precaution, a Berlin agent is sent out to the opium den to transfer Byron. She is wearing asbestos-lined kid gloves and 7-inch spike heels. No, not so she can fit in with the crowd, but so that she can reach that sconce to unscrew Byron. The other bulbs watch in barely subdued terror. The word goes out along the grid at something close to the speed of light. Every bulb, Ezos, looking down the empty black bakelite streets, Nitrolampen and Votangis at night soccer matches, just Wolframs, Monowatts, and Siriuses. Every bulb in Europe knows what's happened. They are silent with impotence, with surrender in the face of struggles they thought were all myth. We can't help this common thought humming through pastures of sleeping sheep, down autobahns, and to the bitter ends of coaling piers in the north. There's never been anything we could do. Anyone shows us the meanest hope of transcending, and the Committee on Incandescent Anomalies comes in and takes him away. Some do protest, maybe, here and there, but it's only information, glow-modulated, harmless, nothing close to the explosions in the faces of the powerful that Byron once envisioned back there in his baby ward, in his innocence. He is taken to Neukölln, to a basement room, the home of a glassblower who is afraid of the night and who will keep Byron glowing and on watch over all the flint bowls, the griffins and flower ships, ibexes in mid-leap, green spiderwebs, somber ice deities. This is one of many so-called control points where suspicious bulbs can be monitored easily. In less than a fortnight, a gong sounds along the ice and stone corridors of the Phoebus headquarters, and faces swivel over briefly from their meters. Not too many gongs around here. Gongs are special. Byron has passed 1,000 hours, and the procedure is now standard. The Committee on Incandescent Anomalies sends a hitman to Berlin. But here something odd happens. Yes, damned odd. The plan is to smash up Byron and send him right back there in the shop to cull it and batch. Salvage the tungsten, of course, and let him be reincarnated in the glassblower's next project, a balloon setting out on a journey from the top of a white skyscraper. This wouldn't be too bad a deal for Byron. He knows as well as Phoebus does how many hours he has on him. Here in the shop, he's watched enough glass being melted back into the structureless pool from which all glass forms spring and respring, and wouldn't mind going through it himself, but he is trapped on the karmic wheel. The glowing orange batch is a taunt, a cruelty. There's no escape for Byron. He's doomed to an infinite regress of sockets and bulb snatchers. In Zips, young Hansel Geschwindig, a Weimar street urchin, twirls Byron out of the ceiling into a careful pocket and Geschwindig out the door again. Darkness invades the dreams of the glassblower. Of all the unpleasantries his dreams grab in out of the night air, an extinguished light is the worst. Light, in his dreams, was always hope, the basic mortal hope. As the contacts break helically away, hope turns to darkness, and the glassblower wakes sharply tonight, crying, "Who? Who?" Phoebus isn't exactly thrown into a frenzy. It's happened before. There is still a procedure to follow. It means more overtime for some employees, so there's that vague, full-boweled pleasure at the windfall, along with an equally vague excitement at the break in routine. You want high emotion, forget Phoebus. Their stone-faced search parties move out into the streets. They know more or less where in the city to look. They are assuming that no one among their consumers knows of Byron's immortality. So the data for non-immortal bulb snatchings ought to apply also to Byron. And the data happen to hump up in poor sections, Jewish sections, drug, homosexual, prostitute, and magic sections of the capital. Here are the most logical bulb snatchers in terms of what the crime is. Look at all the propaganda. It's a moral crime. Phoebus discovered, one of the great undiscovered discoveries of our time, that consumers need to feel a sense of sin. That guilt, in proper invisible hands, is a most powerful weapon. In America, Lyle Bland and his psychologists had figures, expert testimony, and money. Money in the Puritan sense, an outward and visible okay on their intentions, enough to tip the discovery of guilt at the cusp between scientific theory and fact. Growth rates in later years were to bear Bland out. Actually, what bore Bland out was an honorary pallbearer sextet of all the senior members of Salatieri, Poor, Nash, De Brutus, and Short, plus Lyle Jr., who was sneezing. Buddy at the last minute decided to go see Dracula. He was better off. Of all the legacies Bland left around, the bulb-snatching heresy was perhaps his grandest. It doesn't just mean that somebody isn't buying a bulb. It also means that same somebody is not putting any power in that socket. It is a sin both against Phoebus and against the grid. Neither one is about to let that get out of hand. So, out go the Phoebus Flatfoots looking for the snatched Byron, but the urchin has already left town, gone to Hamburg, traded Byron to a Reeperbahn prostitute so he can shoot up some morphine. The young woman's customer tonight is a cost accountant who likes to have light bulbs screwed into his asshole. And this John has also brought a little hashish to smoke, so by the time he leaves, he's forgotten about Byron still there in his asshole. Doesn't ever, in fact, find out, because when he finally gets around to sitting down, having stood up in trolleys all the way home, it's on his own home toilet, and plop, there goes Byron in the water, and flush away down the waistlines to the Elbe estuary. He is just round enough to get through smoothly all the way. For days he floats over the North Sea till he reaches Helgoland, that red and white Napoleon pastry tipped in the sea. He stays there for a while, at a hotel between the Hengst and the Monch, still being brought back one day to the mainland by a very old priest, who's been put hep to Byron's immortality in the course of a routine dream about the taste of a certain 1911 Hockheimer. Suddenly, there's the great Berlin Eispalast, a booming, dim iron trust cavern, the smell of women in the blue shadows, perfumes, leathers, fur skating costumes, ice dust in the air, flashing legs, jutting haunches, desire in Grippa-like flashes, helplessness at the end of a crack-the-whip, rocketing through beams of sunlight choked with the powdered ice, and a voice in the blurred mirror underfoot saying, "Find the one who has performed this miracle. He is a saint. Expose him. Expedite his canonization." The name is on a list the old man presently draws up of about 1,000 tourists who have been in and out of Helgoland since Byron was found on the beach. The priest begins a search by train, footpath, and Hispano-Suiza, checking out each of the tourists on his lists. But he gets no farther than Nuremberg, where his valise, with Byron wrapped inside an alb, is ripped off by a transsectite, a Lutheran named Mausmacher, who likes to dress up in Roman regalia. This Mausmacher, not content with standing in front of his own mirror making papal crosses, thinks it will be a really bizarre kick to go out to the Zeppelin field, to a Nazi torchlight rally in full drag, and walk around blessing people at random. Green torches flaring, red swastikas, twinkling brasses, and Father Mausmacher, checking out tits and asses, waistlines and baskets, humming a clerical little tune, some Bach riff, smiling as he moves through the Ziegheils and courses of Die Pfanne Hoch. Unknown to him, Byron slides out of the stolen vestments onto the ground. He is then walked past by several 100,000 boots and shoes, and not one so much as brushes him, Natch. He is scavenged next day, the field now death empty, columned, pale, streaked with long mud puddles, morning clouds lengthening behind the gilded swastika and wreath, by a poor Jewish ragpicker, and taken on into another 15 years of preservation against chance and against Phoebus. He will be screwed into Mutter after mother, as the female threads of German light bulb sockets are known, for some reason that escapes everybody. The cartel have already gone over to Contingency Plan B, which assumes a 7-year statute of limitations, after which Byron will be considered legally burned out. Meanwhile, the personnel taken off of Byron's case are busy tracking a long-lived bulb that once occupied a socket on the porch of an army outpost in the Amazon jungle, Beatriz the bulb, who has just been stolen, mysteriously, by an Indian raiding party. Through his years of survival, All these various rescues of Byron happen as if by accident. Whenever he can, he tries to instruct any bulbs nearby in the evil nature of Phoebus and in the need for solidarity against the cartel. He has come to see how bulb must move beyond its role as conveyor of light energy alone. Phoebus has restricted bulb to this one identity, but there are other frequencies above and below the visible band. Bulb can give heat. Bulb can provide energy for plants to grow. Illegal plants inside closets, for example. Bulb can penetrate the sleeping eye and operate among the dreams of men. Some bulbs listened attentively. Others thought of ways to think to Phoebus. Some of the older anti-Byronists were able to fool with their parameters in systematic ways that would show up on the ebonite meters under the Swiss mountain. There were even a few self-immolations hoping to draw the hitmen down. Any talk of bulb's transcendence, of course, was clear subversion. Phoebus based everything on bulb efficiency, the ratio of the usable power coming out to the power put in. The grid demanded that this ratio stay as small as possible. That way, they got to sell more juice. On the other hand, low efficiency meant longer burning hours, and that cut into bulb sales for Phoebus. In the beginning, Phoebus tried increasing filament resistance, reducing the hours of life on the sly, and gradually, till the grid noticed a fall off in revenues, and started screaming. The two parties, by and by, reached an accord on a compromise bulb life figure that would bring in enough money for both of them and to go 50-50 on the costs of the anti-bulb snatching campaign. Along with a more subtle attack against those criminal souls who forswear bulbs entirely and use candles, Phoebus's long-standing arrangement with the meat cartel was to restrict the amount of tallow in circulation by keeping more fat in meat to be sold regardless of cardiac problems that might arise, and redirecting most of what was trimmed off into soap production. Soap, in those days, was a booming concern. Among the consumers, the Bland Institute had discovered deep feelings about shit. Even at that, meat and soap were minor interlocks to Phoebus. More important were items like tungsten. Another reason why Phoebus couldn't cut down bulb life too far: too many tungsten filaments would eat into available stockpiles of the metal, China being the major world source. This also brought in very delicate questions of Eastern policy and disturbed the arrangement between General Electric and Krupp about how much tungsten carbide would be produced, where and when and what the prices would be. The guidelines settled on were $37 to $90 a pound in Germany, $200 to $400 a pound in the U.S. This directly governed the production of machine tools and thus all areas of light and heavy industry. When the war came, some people thought it unpatriotic of GE to have given Germany an edge like that, but nobody with any power. Don't worry. Byron, as he burns on, sees more and more of this pattern. He learns how to make contact with other kinds of electric appliances in homes, in factories, and out in the streets. Each has something to tell him. The pattern gathers in his soul. Seele, as the core of the earlier carbon filament was known in Germany, and the grander and clearer it grows, the more desperate Byron gets. Someday he will know everything and still be as impotent as before. His youthful dreams of organizing all the bulbs in the world seem impossible now. The grid is wide open. All messages can be overheard. And there are more than enough traders out there on the line. Profits traditionally don't last long. They are either killed outright or given an accident serious enough to make them stop and think, and most often they do pull back. But on Byron has been visited an even better fate. He is condemned to go on forever, knowing the truth and powerless to change anything. No longer will he seek to get off the wheel. His anger and frustration will grow without limit, and he will find himself, poor, perverse bulb, enjoying it. Laszlo Janf walks away down the canal, where dogs are swimming now, dogs in packs, dogs' heads bobbing down the scummy canals, dogs' heads, chestnuts, also may be found invisible in the air, over secret air bases, in the thickest fogs. Conditions of temperature, pressure, and humidity form Springer shapes the tuned flyer can feel, the radars can see, the helpless passengers can almost glimpse, now and then, out the little window, as through sheets of vapor. It is the kind dog, the dog no man ever conditioned, who is there for us at beginnings and ends and journeys we have to take, helpless, but not quite unwilling. The pleats in Yamp's suit go weaving away like iris leaves in a backyard wind. The colonel is left alone in Happyville. The steel city waits him, the even cloud light raising a white streak down each great building, all of them set up as modulations on the perfect grid of the streets, each tower cut off at a different height. And where is the comb that will move through this and restore the old, perfect Cartesian harmony? Where are the great shears from the sky that will readjust Happyville? There is no need to bring in blood or violence here. But the colonel does have his head tilted back now in what may truly be surrender. His throat is open to the pain radiance of the bulb. Paddy McGonagall is the only other witness, and he, a one-man power system with dreams of his own, wants the colonel out of the way as much as anyone. Eddie Pensiero, with the blues flooding his shaking muscles, the down, mortal blues, is holding his scissors in a way barbers aren't supposed to. The points, shuddering in the electric cone, are aiming downward. Eddie Pensiero's fist tightens around the steel loops his fingers have slid out of. The colonel, with the last tilt of his head, exposes his jugular, clearly impatient with the